is Nikki Collins.
Jordan Canada.
Essence Carson.
Liz Cambage.
Imani Media Stafford. And you're listening to WNBA Weekly.
WNBA fans, the season is back. Logan, what's up?
Man, it's good to be back.
Springtime.
It is good.
Yes.
We're always constantly messaging each other anyway, but it's always like speculative during the off season. And now we can enter that magical space where I can just tweet you guys like a name, or I can message you guys like just an all caps, like one word message. And I know you're watching too, so I don't have to explain it. And that's my favorite part of the season.
This is awesome. We got real basketball games. I've got a Ricola in my mouth. I was telling everyone during the third quarter of the last game, I went out to my garden to do one thing for like 90 seconds. I have a garden, everybody. And all in one time, it's like, hey, let's give you all the allergies. So if I fall over coughing, I apologize. My bad in advance.
Never take a break from a game to take care of your own home.
No.
Just stay on the game. Stick with it.
No, like literally take Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and when it's the second half of a sporting event, you just flip it.
Self-care goes out the window.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and honestly, really just get to the middle. Like do away with self-actualization. Just go right to like the social and whatever. I'm not going to dive into that. That's too much of classes I didn't want to take in college.
If anybody who listened to our most recent prediction episodes from earlier this week knows, or really any episode from anything we've ever done on the podcast, knows how I feel about Indiana. So, boy, do I owe some apology.
Let's get started. Hail State, Tierra McCowan, the Fever. What a finish. We're playing recency bias, so Dream and Dallas fans, we're gonna get to you, but. That was a fun finish. Indiana able to do what they couldn't do in a third of the season last year, and that's win a basketball game.
Do you want the numbers? I have the numbers in front of me.
Absolutely, spill it.
These are not judgments. These are just numbers. They started last season 0-10. 10 straight games, 10 straight losses. They beat down the Atlanta Dream at home. They were 1-10. And then they lost another 6. They entered July with 1 win. Halfway through this, about the midpoint of the season in July, 1 win. The season is a day old, and Indiana has a W. That's something.
That's huge. That's huge. And I think that the story beyond that, which you and I have already tussled with this, we should have saved this for now, is. Again, you said 1 win. It's 1 day. A lot's going to happen.
I'm not saying they're great. I'm just saying one more win than they had.
But my job is to spill propaganda far and wide. And it's possible that they found their answer in a player like McCowan. We were going over this. I was digging through the play-by-play right after the game ended. The Fever did not get a bucket until 5:10. They had no points, nearly 5 full minutes through the first quarter. They then didn't score again. It was about 3 minutes, 29 seconds when Tierra McCowan comes off the bench. And at that point, they're down 2-12. The score was 19-16 by the end of the quarter. That team is 100% different when she's on the court. They're spaced better. They understand the rules more. They find better looks. And that's after one game of basketball and honestly, like one half, like really impressive half of a quarter. A lot could switch things up, but it's one of those things that you felt the groove really well. It was different than, for instance, a player like Arike Iguodala who played with obviously in Dallas tonight, and like Asia Durr even were two kind of people that were like, let's give him some chops, put him in some opportunities, and like first game, let's test some things out. I felt like McCowan was put in the game as like we got to win this game. And that's where it was like, that's where it's been really surprising. And I know Kyle is watching this stream with the widest smile right now because he feels like he already won his prediction, and we'll see how that goes.
Well, I know I already lost mine, so it's never too early. I don't know if you've been keeping up WNBA fans with our preseason predictions, but I predicted Leilani Mitchell to be the sixth woman of the year coming out of Phoenix. She got cut. So,
I'm not gonna sit here and say that's out of the question. Is she clears waivers?
sure.
Easily find a job.
I have two big takeaways from the Indiana game.
Let's do it.
I'll start with positive. One, Candice Dupree trusting a rookie in a moment like that is huge.
Huge.
Not only was the dish really sweet, but just trusting a rookie to put up that shot and to make it in a do or die situation, game one of the season, says a lot about how far that locker room has come along.
Yeah.
Seeing these guys. And to me, that means that if they do want to shuffle around their starting lineup, if it's going to help them win, I don't think there's going to be a lot of hurt feelings if within a week or two, McCowan is in the starting lineup where we both agree she needs to be. The second take is considerably more negative. And that's they got this done against the New York Liberty, who finished a game above them in the standings last year with 7 wins.
I legitimately
don't know how much we can tell about this team.
I get it. I legitimately don't care. Tonight, tonight we dine in luxury. I get it on the competition side of things. First of all, the one thing I want to take away here is you calling out the thing that's probably not going to get the publicity here was Dupree's setup there was phenomenal. I mean, that was play was smooth as silk. It was legitimately like a shortstop turning two. She was able to get the dish, just like you said, in the exact spot that she knew McCowan could palm it, transition, hit the layup. It was one through 2 defenders. I mean, it was absolutely huge. It speaks to her maturity on the court. And really interesting. I don't know if she was the direct draw up for that play, but it's pretty incredible to think that she was definitely going to be a considerable factor in this play they drew up.
Yeah, and you said something really great right before we started going live, which is it was like seeing a quarterback direct his receiver in motion, like put it right on the money where only they could get it. Just enough time left on the clock. It's just a great play, whether it was drawn up or not. It was just great basketball sense, and that's just not something you can say about this team hardly at all last year. And to be able to show it on the first night, like again, I'm not gonna run away and say that they're gonna make the playoffs or anything like that yet. I just one game is one game, but one win is still a win. So I don't want to take anything away from a team. Had every chance to lose, by the way. There was a lot of back and forth at the end of this game that could have gone either way. Some missed free throws by Indiana really could have sealed it for them. Ended up not biting them afterwards. So
the missed free throws by Indiana, but also New York had 5 or 6 opportunities to close that thing out.
Yeah.
Lots of, I mean, they took a lot of shots. They probably easily could have found better looks. Things just simply didn't land.
Sure.
For a good chunk of the fourth quarter, it really looked like they were going to get themselves in control. And it really just kind of flat out didn't happen. I do want to make some positive call-outs for the Liberty because I think they come out of this with a lot of positivity that they should be excited about. First and foremost, where's Rashonda Gray been all my life? +7 in plus minus, 5 for 7 from the field, 10 points, 8 boards. The Liberty are nowhere without her presence. So there's a point where it looked like the Fever they had a double-digit lead. It looked like they had a potential to roll with it, and she was that type of player that came in and disrupted and made things happen for them, which I was excited about. I have one big concern about New York coming out of this. I think the one thing they need to figure out is we've got to be able to lean on more than 2 players from the get. I think in the half, Kia Nurse and, of course, Tina Charles scored all but 7 points in the first half. And obviously, I mean, that's the type of things like you've got to be able to trust and distribute that as much as possible. I would love it if Hanju could get more than a minute 5 in the game. I was excited to see what she could put together.
I don't think that's going to be the regular rotation. I think they're going to probably work her in. I don't think they're someone play them if they're not ready. So I think she's ready. She's just going to get her legs under her.
Yeah.
Tina Charles finished with 32 points, 10 from the free throw line, 11 of 23 from the floor. She is a good enough player to do that, but I don't think that's how you're going to win. I think she can go out and get you 30 points every night if you want, but I don't know. It's a team sport. You can't I know the big thing right now is to be watching the NBA playoffs and basically pit star versus star.
Mhm.
This is especially to begin a season where, like, even the WNBA season that skews much shorter than other sports. Like, you can't, I don't know. Tina Charles was out there playing almost 33 minutes.
Yeah.
She shot well, she played well, but obviously, like, that's going to be, if it's not enough to beat the Fever, I don't think it's going to be enough to beat better teams. So you got to go back to the drawing board and see. I mean, the answer isn't necessarily to just like change your rotation fundamentally, but you have to have. I mean, did anyone from the bench really come in and contribute besides Gray? Bria Hartley came in, went 2 for 9. Nisha Wright played 13 minutes, didn't attempt a shot. Asia Dur had a fine night, but just a lot of the role players just weren't there yet, and maybe that's just to be expected
Yeah.
at the beginning of the season.
Dur had some key moments, which was certainly exciting. I know that I believe you and Jason have her on the rookie of the year radar, but I think she came in and showed some good chops. One thing I liked is early on she came in aggressive, and I think that's something she needed to do. This is a type of game where I almost don't fully look at the stat sheet if I'm Katie Smith. I'm just looking at what's her presence, what's her confidence level, how is that panning out for the most part. Kyle made a point early on in our Facebook chat, early on in that game, that I thought was really succinct. His claim was basically no team seems to rely on one player more than the Liberty might be relying on Tina Charles. Like, it's clear they need to figure out a more established sense of team basketball there, which makes sense. The quick question I have, and then I want to hit up our some of our followers here in the stream, see if they have any comments or questions. What's it going to take for anyone to consider Tina Charles in any MVP discussion? Outside of the Liberty being good and winning games, like, what's it gonna take?
I mean, obviously, if she goes for 30 every night, she'll be up there because the stats are. I don't know. I would bet that stats are over 75% of what's taken into consideration. But if she's scoring 30 every night and they win 6 games, no, like, it's not going to happen. I think they need to at least be in the playoff hunt.
Okay, because I think last year statistically, I think she was in top 10 in most all stats. And what's interesting to me is, I think obviously if you're not gonna see it in the win column, it's hard to give someone an MVP. But it's interesting to me that, like, she's the type of, I feel like when we talk about elite level players, she just tends to not hit that point.
Oh,
And this is not, by the way, this is not a because they're not good. They were the third team in the standings 2 seasons ago, and this still was a thing.
I agree, and I'm not someone who thinks the MVP should just be the best player on the best team every year. I think that's a lot of times it's wrong. Across all sports, I think MVP voting is really just about who's got the best narrative. But I think that's why if you're the leader on a team that's resurgent, that goes from 7 wins to 22 wins, and you're in the playoffs, then you're leading a great narrative, and then also you're responsible, obviously, for a lot of the impact on the court. And so those things combined lead to an MVP season. I think the story shouldn't have as much to do with it as it does. It's also why you don't see a lot of back-to-back MVPs in any sports. People get bored and they want something new. That's why, like we can name all sorts of players in the NBA that probably should have won MVPs that they didn't. But yeah, no, I like a night like tonight, I think she'd be in discussion if the Liberty can pull off wins like this. They need to be the team scoring at the buzzer to pull ahead, because I think those moments, especially early on in the season, resonate with people.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, sorry. I thought I was getting one thrown to me. Perfect. No, we're good. Let's go ahead and hit the chat really quick. Sorry, everyone. I thought I had a technical difficulty. Let's see if we have any good questions. Logan, if you see one, throw it out as well. I'm just digging through the chat, and I'm more clunky at this than Kyle usually is. Yeah, so we have a lot of calls for McCown being in the starting lineup. Dewey Susani, I know they said preseason don't count, but the Fever won 3 of their games. I like that.
And it's nice now to have a real one, so they don't have to like Fever fans. Like, you don't have to go around saying that you were good in the preseason. You're good in the real season. Like, this is, like, we don't necessarily know what a quality win is yet, and who's good and who's bad in this league, but still counts as one. So
yeah. Ryan Dream talking about Tina Charles. Someone has to score. They need to win for her to be in the MVP discussion. Classic big stats on a bad team. So essentially validating your point, Logan. She is that good though, he says. So hopefully they win more games and she gets her due.
I think that's
Yeah.
basically the same argument for Asia Dur for Rookie of the Year. By the way, like if this Liberty team takes that trajectory where Tina Charles is thinking about MVP, I think it accompanies an Asia Dur Rookie of the Year campaign.
Definitely. So yeah, that's really everything I've got. I mean, really, in terms of this game, we'll go ahead and hold for like, let's go ahead and take 30 seconds. If you got a quick question or comment about the game, about the Fever, about the Liberty, let's hop into that for a couple minutes. Then if not, we have a second game to talk about that I'm sure a lot of Atlanta and Dallas fans want us to dive into. Anything you want to talk about while we're waiting on that? So it's not just us sitting in silence looking down into the left.
All right, I just want to double check that I didn't miss anything. Yeah, no, I was going back and forth between the games tonight. I think we all were, and fully expected the Atlanta game to be really the headliner. I really wanted to see how the Dream were this year because they're one of the teams I think a lot of people don't know what to do with in their predictions. I've seen them as high as NBA or WNBA champions and like the number 1 or 2 seed, and I've seen them basically just barely clinging to the playoffs.
Yeah.
So that's one of the more intriguing storylines this year. I mean, everything's a mystery at this point, but I thought it was really interesting that they started off shooting 60% like in first quarter. We always think of them as being a defensive team, and then despite their hot offense, they were down 10 early on. And so everything we knew about the Dream was just turned on its head for a little while. And then they remembered to play defense, and suddenly they were able to pull back into things. And as you called in our chat, were able to pull ahead in the end. So that was
I want
interesting start to their season to be counter what we know about them.
I want to make it clear. I'll screenshot it if I have to. At the end of the third quarter, I called the Dream coming back to win that game. It just felt like that was bound to happen, and I think a lot of it was. I think the Wings are coming in with some emotional sentiment because I think they understand that they're the squad that's kind of the Isle of Misfit Toys right now. Everyone wants to talk about Cam Beige and how Vegas are going to make things work. They seem to just get dropped in the discussion. And also, what I think is fun is it was a very classic Brian Agler style of play where he was able to find roles for people to make things work. He tried to time as well as he could when Amani McGee Stafford was going to get her minutes. I thought it should have been earlier, but that's potentially me. But I honestly, when we were early on in the game and it looked like it was potential that Dallas could close it out, I'm going to be really frank here, and I don't know if Wings fans are going to throw things at me for this. I almost didn't chalk this up as wow, Dallas is really coming in and improving themselves. I really almost kind of saw it as like Atlanta's got some rust to shake off, and yeah, and so that's kind of where I took things. There's one thing we're not that's gone is that like Tiffany Hayes had a very quiet night. So we haven't seen her in full steam yet. Sykes played well, 10 points, but I could expect more out of her. Like there's a handful of players that you expect to see a lot more out of. Obviously, we're eventually going to get, that's going to switch around. But the main thing, obviously, I think the main pivotal player here was obviously Renee Montgomery. Her plus minus was in the 20s and was a pretty consistent scorer. Was 3 for 4 from distance tonight. Like across the board, played extremely well. I'm ready to talk about Elizabeth Williams whenever you're ready to talk about Elizabeth Williams.
Well, before we go down that road, I do weird stuff happens all the time. I've watched my NBA team lose 4 starters in an off season and then win more games the following year. Like stuff like that can happen, but it's the exception and not the rule. And if I was a Dallas Wings fan thinking like, this team still got talent, I think we can make the playoffs. Like games now early in the season count as much as games late in the season. You really need to win these games. I know it's day one. They might totally just outpace the competition and totally prove me wrong, but I think they're really going to be scrapping at the end of the year for a playoff spot. And look at the difference in the seedings between 2 and 8 last year. It's always a narrow margin. There just aren't that many games to play. So
yeah,
you you can go back and regroup and there's plenty of time to go back to the drawing board and figure stuff out. But you also can't let winnable games get away like this. And when you have a lead on a team like this at the end of a game,
Yeah.
it does matter. It's not the preseason anymore.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I think the main thing we're going to call out here, and I think a lot of Dallas fans would agree, what they really had eyes on was it was fun to really watch Arike Gumbawale, at least emotionally, come in and feel like she belongs.
Mm-hmm.
12 points. I mean, 12 points. She did shoot 5 from 16, only 30%, only made 1 out of 6 threes.
There were
no turnovers, which I thought was huge. She put herself in that type of discussion that was, we have a couple corners here to fix. We have a couple things to send off. She finds some confidence. She could get herself in the Rookie of the Year discussion pretty easily. And let me say this, that's not something I was saying yesterday. I was very critical of this pick. So it's interesting to see where that could go. So I enjoyed that on an intrinsic level. Basketball wise, I think there's a lot to put together. One player that I do want to shout out, because I just really enjoyed her game, was Brooke McCarty-Williams, 42% from the line, put in some really quality minutes. She's the type of player that may not get as much publicity, but she's one that could make an immediate impact. I think about the rookie crew from Washington last year, who all found a way to contribute in some way. She definitely could do that. But yeah, it's hard to say that the pieces are in place right now. And if I'm Brian Agler, I don't know that I'm worried about that. Like, get what you can out of this, play with house money, and set yourself up to find the next level in a year or so. It is not the worst situation for him.
I don't want to rain on any Dallas fans who are hoping to do more than this, but I really think the best thing you can do this season is make the playoffs and make your team appealing, because right now you're suffering from, honestly, a little bit of an image problem because of the Cam Page videos on Instagram. Like, I don't know, like, I'm sure all these players talk about their experiences together, and people are friends and have friends on other teams. Like, you want to be an enticing free agency destination. And right now, they need to prove that they have a good group together, and they're a couple pieces away.
Absolutely. No, and I think that makes a lot of sense. All right, I've waited too long. I got to talk about Elizabeth Williams. Play of the year contender. It's going to take a lot for me, and that's including watching Tierra McCowan win with a layup at the buzzer. 3 swats in like as many seconds was just, it was badass. I don't know what else to call it. Your take.
I'm assuming that your soon-to-be 1-year-old son is not watching this, so I'm not spoiling anything here. Steve today made a good dad move by buying his soon-to-be 1-year-old son a Little Tykes hoop. And the best thing about having a kid in the house with one of those hoops is doing what she just did in a professional basketball game, which is just erase shots off the rim.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it reminded me of. Like, just downing, like every video you've ever seen before a game of a player playing with like a kid and kind of like giving them a hard time. Like, that's not supposed to happen against other pros. That's just supposed to be when you're messing around. That's good stuff. If that continues, I actually think that one of the more intriguing awards this year is going to be Defensive Player of the Year, because I wonder if it doesn't necessarily need to go to a big this year. And that's how we always think about it. We always think about rim protection and who anchors the defense. But like, I don't know. I think it's going to be kind of a hotly contested thing. But if you average 3 blocks a game, you're probably going to win.
Yeah, definitely. That said, if you average 3 blocks a game and they were all in one sitting, it's almost like it just kind of feels like one big block stat wise. But do not think that I'm watering that down by any means. You know what I loved about that play more than anything? You and I and like the rest of the hosts here on the show have talked about, the one thing about us is what we like the most about basketball tends to be the boring stuff. The fundamentals of it is what I loved. So like you played a lot of basketball in your teens and as a kid. In the young years when you're playing basketball, what's the one thing we all remember about being trained on and taught about on defense?
Don't leave your feet.
Well, don't leave your feet.
Don't leave the man with the ball. I mean, there's a couple of them.
Yeah.
Don't shoot over the top of people.
Shoot over the top of people. No, for me, it's 4 words that you always heard it from the coach when you ran down the court. Hands up on D. Like,
okay, yeah.
Hands up. And that was what, if you go back and watch the play, what made those blocks awesome was they were fundamental. Like it was just like, I'm in a set, I'm in a bound, my arm is up, I'm here to follow the shot, I go straight up. Like it was just like,
Just
it's
in
just
the
fun to watch.
opposite, your coach was like, hands up on D, and mine was like, stop trying to shoot it over that guy. Like,
Yeah.
hands are up. You can't do that.
Yeah. No, exactly.
It, yeah. No, it's absolutely, it's good. It's like, I think people use it as a knock on the WNBA sometimes to call it like, oh, like it's fundamental basketball, as if that like lessens it somehow. Like, I want to make it very clear. I love dunking. I think it's awesome. Like, fast-paced basketball is great. I watch the NBA just as much as I watch the WNBA. But what makes a play like the McCowan layup, or the putback, like, great, is the pass that preceded it. It was poetic almost to watch. I don't want to get novellas on the pitch on you right now. Like, I'm not saying that every
Solid
move,
deep cut there.
not every movement on a basketball court is a dance and a thing of beauty, but when it's working, and when things are clicking, and when a team is playing well, all movement stands out, and it makes you think like, this team can play, this team trusts each other. Things like
Absolutely.
fundamental things like hands up on defense, like not missing lane. Like when teams do those things that we were all told when we were growing up playing basketball, and they do them so well. Like, look at how well the Dream plays defense. Like, look at Arike is a killer in crunch time situations. We've all seen her do it, and she's trying to get that 3 up at the end of the game, which we all know she can hit, and has no space. Like,
Absolutely. There's
absolutely,
no, totally.
Defense won that game for them.
No. One last thought I want to make, and then I want to hit a quick question. I saw that I think will be a fun discussion that'll roll us right into our last thought, and then we'll let everyone do the rest of their Friday. It's Friday night. I just got paid. Um, that was
like,
for my boy JT. No, yeah, no, I got you. Wait, we turned in time cards yesterday. No, if you're the Dream, things started a bit rusty. There were a few concerns. Obviously, Tip didn't play as strong as she wanted to. Had a really pretty rough game. They were still able to pull off the win, but there's a few questions. They're coming out of a year where they got to the semifinals, second seed, lost Angel McCautry. It was a big part of what kept them from getting to the final. Coming out of a game like this, when you look at the Dream, does your stock go down? Do you wipe it out because it's game one? Does watching them this, did your stock change on them at all?
No.
Tonight?
I think defense brings your floor up. So if you play a rough offensive game and you're a great defensive team, you might still play, at a B+ level. And I think they're the type of team that can suffer through stretches where they don't score because they can enforce that on the other end. A lot of teams can't survive something like that. That's why I think Colin won Coach of the Year last year, and I think why she's a threat to do it again this year. If the Dream perform as well as they can. Now, their ceiling has to do with their offense. And their offense, as you mentioned, went a lot of minutes in the first quarter without really getting much of anything. But I don't know. Sorry, I'm crossing my lines here. That was the other game. They shot well at the beginning of the game and still ended up down 10. So outgunning someone on offense is probably not going to be their path to victory most games. It's going to be defense. I think they're fine with that. I don't think it's overgeneralizing to say that that's their identity. I think they take pride in that.
No, definitely. No, that makes. That's kind of where I see things. Definitely, there's a lot to be told on that, but just coming out of this, I almost feel like the fourth quarter was very indicative of there's a lot of mental maturity here, and there's a lot of stamina there to where, hey, we know when we're in striking distance, we're going to make this happen. And it'll be interesting coming into next week to see how they transition into turning that to a full 40, because that's where you go from being a good team to a dangerous team. I have a quick question. Ryan Dream had an awesome question I want to jump into, and then we'll transition this into the final point that I know you and I definitely want to jump into. He was asking about thoughts on the aesthetic between these two games. You had one in a very classic large arena. You had one in Westchester in a smaller, more intimate setting. What are your thoughts on the aesthetics? What do you like more, especially based on where we are right now with the league and its prominence? You got any thoughts there?
Watching the Dream game, I think they need to start selling the lower bowl seats for less or something. I think they need people closer to the court, and that's not to convince people at home that it's back to the rafters. I don't like the look of it being. I mean, obviously, like the mics that the broadcasters speak into, they block out crowd noise, so it doesn't sound like there's noise there. And a lot of times you're used to watching NBA games, especially right now in the playoffs, you still have a lot of ambient noise and excitement. You don't want to feel like you're watching like an off-season game or like an afternoon softball game or something that doesn't have a lot of buzz around it. So I would love to see people in the lower seats more. I thought there were too many gaps, and that's not an indictment on like the city's attendance or anything like that. I think that's pretty common. I did like I don't like that they're forced to play in a smaller venue, the Liberty, but it kind of looked like a really fun place to watch a game. Like if you're there, I mean, it's not a barn necessarily, but there's that second level where you're on top of the court. There's not really a bad seat in the house, so I don't know. It's not ideal. You want to be in a bigger stadium, but I've watched my local college that I went to at Utah State. They moved their women's team from being in the Spectrum in the big stadium to a new facility where the volleyball team plays. And in some respects, it is disrespectful because you want to be able to have the opportunity to sell out a bigger arena, but also the buzz and the atmosphere in the game is so much exciting when you're shoulder to shoulder with fans.
Yeah.
So it pros and cons. Sorry that's a sucky answer, but obviously two very different atmospheres, but I almost prefer the more intimate one in this case.
I will say this. I think at the start it was exciting to move the dream into this large arena, and I agree with you. I think whatever you can do to build an atmosphere, like to me, it's almost not a visual; it's a sense of atmosphere. Um, a big point that I made last year that was frustrating was that there was a lot of legitimacy that came with seeing like Madison Square Garden on the floor when the Liberty played. That said, at the start when they hit Westchester and the broadcast was starting and they were showing people walking into what was clearly a community center wooden door and a guy who was just taking tickets, like it definitely had that small feel. Halfway into the quarter I forgot about it and it was just watching basketball.
Yeah, on from TV, from a TV league pass standpoint, I don't think it makes that big of a difference watching.
And I will say Westchester has just enough to play the role a little bit, in the sense of like they have some of the nuances larger arenas do have. They have like a light up marquee screen running across the balcony. They have somewhat of a solid sound system. You talked about like the upper deck. While not massive, still plays a role there. They have enough that makes it work. It's not like this was done at like a city rec center with like just metal chairs put up around. This wasn't like a wrestling match in a VFW hall. It was just enough to make that aesthetic work. But by the end of it, it was really just me watching basketball and the crowd making it work. And what's cool about arenas like that people tend to not realize, when you're in a large arena, especially like a dome stadium, but even in those basketball arenas, sound will move up. And so it's hard to build out that atmosphere unless you have a really strong crowd.
Yeah.
In a place like Westchester, that sound immediately hits the court. So it really adds to the ideal there. I almost like the idea of let's see if we can fill up an arena like this, and then let's test filling up larger things. Let's turn this into something that's positive and then make that happen. It's sort of why Seattle, when they were in the Key Arena, that to me was almost like the perfect situation, because it was like the Sonics played there. It was a large arena, but it was just it was a bit succinct enough, and it was a bit nuanced enough that it was still kind of like it felt owned. And I think that's the thing, is when you get to a venue, you want to feel like it's your venue and not just like we're renting the court for the night. And the Liberty can say like, we own this, like this is our home. And when it's time to move up, they move up. And that's kind of where I saw that with Key, which is why I'm super sad that they're not in Key.
I 100% agree. I mean, if taking it as disrespect fuels the players, then by all means the players should feel that way. But fans, if you're a Liberty fan, work with what you got. Go sell out that place and make it the place that no one wants to play in. Like make it the most feared home court in the league, because you have a really rare opportunity to get loud and to get right on top of players, where maybe in other places like in Atlanta or wherever else maybe they just don't have that same opportunity. So
I will say this about the Dreams venue. To actually see the Atlanta Dream logo at center court was the most refreshing thing in the world. The one thing that killed me, and this is no respect to GW and McCamish Pavilion. It's a good venue, it's a good school, it's a good area. They built a good atmosphere there. It was hard to see another sport, like basketball organization's logo on what's supposed to be your court. And
yeah,
so it's just refreshing to see the colors and the logo, and it very much felt like it was their home venue, which is pretty cool.
yeah, players are just going to play. I mean, they've played on 1,000 courts and they'll play on 1,000 more. But it's just got to be a good feeling to go out and feel like that you did, like the logo that you're wearing on your shorts is the same one on the court. Like you're like it's your people are there to see you. Like
Yeah,
I don't know. I do think that there's a different feeling there when you get the colors right. So
yeah. I will say, and Ryan's becoming our Dream Insider in the chat here.
perfect.
He did want to make note that the while the logo is nice, it was not updated technically. So that is one thing. So good call out. But in general, I really appreciated that. It adds to it. Like one thing I really appreciate about Atlanta is they have Atlanta and Dream on their jerseys,
Yeah,
as opposed to an ad mark, which I appreciate. Which both of you and I work in digital marketing. So one thing about Indiana that honestly this might add to your feelings about Indiana. Seeing Salesforce kind of gave me anxiety working in the world of digital marketing. I don't know how you felt. I felt like I was supposed to be at the office while I was
yeah.
watching the game. That made it rough.
It was like imagining things, and I was like, no, it's the weekend. I don't have to think about Salesforce. But that's I'm
Yeah.
assuming that most people don't have a visceral reaction to Salesforce.
And maybe you do. Who knows? Maybe if like Slack did like or even like Google Hangouts, like something that's very like everyone who works in an office uses this thing. It'd just be like, oh, please no. I just love not to. It's like if you worked at a nice restaurant and you got tired of it, and then you go hang out with your extended family, and that's where they want to eat. It's like, can we please not? Can we go anywhere else?
I've seen where, yeah, I've seen the back room. Yeah,
Yeah, I know how it's made.
we got to keep Uni Talk for a different day, or we're gonna keep people with us all night.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, 100%. Let's take a couple of minutes on one last thing, and then we'll call it a night. And that is what I actually believe. This might be bold of me. Possibly the best marketing move that the WNBA has made in a very, very long time, and that was the Hey Trolls video that launched earlier today, somewhat in the early afternoon. For those not familiar with it, head to the WNBA account. I should have told Jason to sync it up because we could have played it right now. But head to the WNBA Twitter. Easy to find there. They've got it bumped there. Do you want to give us? You're better at quick synopses than I am.
Well, it's a classic compilation video of like a lot of players kind of delivering the same script at like just directly looking at the screen, but like kind of cycling it in and out for effect. And it's essentially addressing like, hey trolls, like the sandwich jokes, they're not that funny. And then it does a little bit of like the mean tweet stuff, like they read some of the tweets directed at players from last season.
Yeah.
And basically just deadpan the camera, like, what are you doing? And it was great. Like go watch it, and it's great because it doesn't come off as overly sensitive. And I was really worried when I started watching it that maybe they would have gone too far, and that would have been a really bad look. I think if you look overly sensitive and you want everyone to play fair and be nice to you on the internet, then you're being a little unrealistic. But I think it was just a nice way of addressing like we always hear players talk about like people think they could beat WNBA players from 1-on-1. Isn't that just stupid? Like
Yeah.
it didn't go out of its way to be overly insulting. Like it definitely was the high road, and it didn't try too hard doing that either. It was just very genuine. I liked it a lot. What I'm really saying is it could have gone wrong. I think if you looked like overly hurt about troll comments, it would have just encouraged them, and instead it really just exposed like, how dumb you sound. Just watch the game. Like
Yeah, and I liked at first that they played like that note of like, hey, if you're gonna come at us, be clever. At least try.
put effort in.
Like enough with the kitchen stuff. You and I talked about how like there's something to Diana Taurasi that's like if you ever got in her face and asked her to actually give you a, like, she'd cut you up. Like, it's so it's,
Yeah. Like there's one of the tweets that they read was something about like they air the WNBA draft on the Weather Channel, and like honestly, that's kind of a funny tweet. But the reaction to it was like, I don't know, a lot of people watch the Weather Channel. I don't see what's wrong with that. Like they
oh my gosh.
roll with it, and
Yeah.
rolling it is always better like than being tone deaf about
Yeah.
what expectations of online strangers should be. So it was very smart and a very good way of kicking off.
Yeah.
We know
Yeah.
there's always going to be sandwich comments under highlight videos, but
Mhm.
this is just a nice way of getting in front of it and being like, just watch. Like
Where it was interesting is they had a couple points where they actually used some mean tweets that honestly were very mean tweets. Like they actually they weren't afraid to hold back.
yeah,
There's a very specific one. There's no better way of putting it, but like it was a joke about menstrual cycles, which is obviously not appropriate, not something you should say completely. And it was something that they found a way. Like, let's address this. Like, this is where people go
uh-huh.
sometimes to come at us, and they found a way to have a classy but still like warm, like charming response to it. Um, you called it out, so I just got to say it. D Rob and the Weather Channel was probably the highlight of the whole video for me. That was actually the Weather Channel is quite popular, so I don't know what you're talking about. But and the last thing I'll say is the way that they tied it up was perfect, which was they found a way to turn it into actually bumping the league, which is, hey, if you want to say something, come to a game and say it to our face. Which I'm picturing that, and I would pay a lot of money for someone to get in the face of Diana Taurasi or Simone Augustus or Brittany Griner.
See it. I would never want to see that.
I'm all for it. Let's see how it works. And I love that. I love that they used it as a way to like, no, hey, show up. Let's if you want to feel that way, but come try it out.
If you went to a game just to heckle Brittany Griner and Diana Taurasi, like obviously the fans would eat you alive. But I feel like if you went to a game to heckle D-Rob, by the end of the game, she'd just be your friend, and you'd feel really bad. You'd be like, actually, she's really cool. I don't know what I was.
Yeah.
Like, I should have done my research.
To this day, it's possible that outside of my wife, the best hug I've ever received was from Danielle Robinson. It's like expert level hugging at levels you'll never understand. Had a couple requests for this, so here's how we're going to close the stream out, Logan. Let's run some quick predictions for the rest of the opening weekend. So we've got 4 more games for the weekend. We've got 3 tomorrow, and we've got a marquee game on Saturday. So I'm just going to run through things. I want to get quick reacts. You and I can bounce off on some predictions. We can make this pretty rapid fire. Let's start things off 3:30 Eastern on ABC. The Mercury head to Seattle for what's becoming one of the most fun rivalries in the league. Merc and Storm. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of key players that are not going to be a part of this.
Gosh.
That said, what are your thoughts about the game, and who do you see coming out of that one?
This is my favorite matchup in the league every year. It's really what introduced us to the league in the first place, and we've gotten to know a lot of the players and a lot of the social media people around these teams so well. So I love watching them match up, but I feel like this season is going to be a season for the Storm to just prove how resilient and positive they can be in the light of a lot of adversity, not just injuries, but their coach's health and a lot of stuff around the team. That's going to be awesome to watch, and I'm really excited to watch them this season. But the Mercury are coming into this season out for blood. I think they're coming into the year thinking we are there, we're championship ready. Basically, this is getting overused this week by a lot of NBA fans, but they're going to run it back. They're basically going to bring back this team and say, we've done nothing but get better. So I'm absolutely taking the Mercury in that game tomorrow. Sorry, Seattle.
Gotcha. I won't even ask for a score because that's tough in the first season. Here's the one thing I'll say, and where I'll refute that a little bit, is it being the first game, and they'll have the whole crew in the building. They're going to have the ring ceremony. I feel like the Storm are going to find a way to muster the energy to make this one happen. Like, it's ring night. It's a fun night to celebrate. We got to find a way to leave people home with the W. I see them. It's first game. Listen, we've all been fans of bad teams that have started the year with a stupid win and just been like, how's this going to happen? And Seattle's not a bad team, by the way. They've still got a quality roster. They're out the MVP, and they're out a legendary player in Sue Bird for some time. I see them finding a way to make this work. I don't know if that's indicative on their success level for the rest of the season. So that's where I quell it.
The emotional
But I see Jordan Canada and Drew Lloyd and Natasha Howard doing just enough to get a W here. It helps that Diana Taurasi's not going to be suiting up either. That's where I see things happening. I think it's going to be close, but I think Seattle's going to eke it out. But I'm not sure I can give as positive a feeling on Seattle coming into next week. At that point,
we talk to you this one. We only need to spend like 15 seconds on this. Did the WNBA purposefully make the ring ceremony just the most painful experience for the opposing team on purpose year?
Yeah, just like
they're just encouraging beef every year.
It's like, do they always try to invite the ex to the wedding? Basically, is what you're saying.
Every time.
Yeah, because that's what made it last year. Because you and I have talked about this when it comes to sports. Bitterness is rough, and that's something you want to avoid. Pettiness every time. There's nothing better than quality sports pettiness. And like the Lynx were expert at it last year when LA came to town at the start of the season. I see no problem in the Storm having fun with that. They've already done it on Twitter. So that's, I mean, that's going to be good stuff. So that'll be fun. Let's head to Connecticut really quick. 7:30 Eastern. This one's actually going to be broadcast here on Twitter. Well, not here, whatever. It's going to be on Twitter. The conference champion Mystics are going to be facing the Sun. The Mystics potentially, well, I think very much so down Elena Deladon. Coming into this game, the Sun just losing Chanel Gumake, trying to kind of rebuild their system there. Where do you see this one panning out?
I like to be contrarian, and I think a lot of people are really riding high on the Mystics, and they deserve it. Mystics are going to be at the top of the league at the end of the year, and probably contender number one. I'm going to go to the Sun. I basically everything you said about Seattle. Obviously, the Sun aren't having a ring ceremony and are in a different situation, but I think they hear all the talk. They know everybody's high on Deladon and the Mystics, and they've got to be thinking, we're going to be right there with them at the end of the year. Let's go out and prove them wrong. So I'll take Connecticut in that one.
I feel exactly the same. I think just with the situation, with Deladon being out, there's a lot in that case that tells me that Connecticut's put it together. I think Kurt Miller's going to have things pretty well in play. And again, that's something that's not indicative to where Washington is. I just think that's where I see it going. So I see the home team winning that one pretty easily. This, I think, is going to be a really intriguing matchup because it's two teams that are potentially changing stock pretty rapidly. The Chicago Sky at the Minnesota Lynx, 8 p.m. Eastern on the CBS Sports Network. Your thoughts?
Don't make me say it, or something bad will happen.
This is a team you've been trying not to jinx all offseason. Yeah.
I've done so good. I'll try to be very careful. I think the Chicago Sky will be the most fun team to watch this season. And I think part of being a fun team is obviously games and that maybe you shouldn't. And obviously sometimes they'll lose games that they shouldn't. I would not be surprised if the Sky beat the Lynx tomorrow. I hope that's soft enough of a commitment.
Yeah.
The whole team doesn't bust their collective ACLs as they get out of the bus, because that sends the teams that I like.
Logan Jones reports through sources that he is intrigued at the idea of the Sky potentially being the Lynx tomorrow night. I'll say it outright. Chicago's going to win this game. I think the talent's there. I think they have the right coach in play. I think they have a potential rookie of the year in bid. And I think this is going to be their call out of, hey guys, we're here and we're here to be a serious player. This is where I see it. I expect the one player that I'm going to call it specifically, I expect Diamond Shields to have a huge night. That's really where I see things panning out. For the most part, that's yeah. I think Chicago definitely on that play. So if I jinx it, you can call it on me. How's that work? Does that relieve you at all?
A little, not a lot.
Okay. Now to what I think is going to be potentially the absolute highlight of week one, which makes sense that it's going to be the end of the week. This is two teams that probably made the biggest moves this year. Sparks at Aces, 8 p.m. Eastern, Sunday night, also going to be on Twitter. Do I even need to ask you?
I don't know. Because I'll be honest, we did our predictions show. I gave you all my takes about the Aces. ESPN writers actually have the Aces maybe even higher than I do this year. So that's a lot of outlets that have come out in this past week and done their predictions. I mean, Las Vegas is up there. Just the star power and the excitement around the team, I think, is really propelling that narrative. But you were with me when I was at work looking over the Sparks roster this year, and I think I made a mistake. Uh, I had them just barely making the playoffs until I looked over their 1 through 12 and realized that team has as much chance to win as anybody. I am going to take the Sparks in that game.
Gosh, dang it! I'm taking the Sparks too. I'm taking the Sparks. 3 words is my reason. I love chaos. And I want to see how Vegas responds with all this buildup and all the emotion that came into CanBase coming to Vegas. I love chaos, and I kind of want to see how they're going to respond to starting the year at home with a loss. Because I honestly think what's really truly gonna make Vegas great is when they finally get the classic Muhammad Ali quote: "Everyone has a plan until they're punched in the mouth." Right? I want to see how they respond to that because that's what's going to show. The one thing I question on Vegas right now is their mental stability. How are they going to build that out? So let's just do that from the get. Let's come right out of the blocks with it and see how it goes. That's one thing I see with it. The other side of it, and I pointed this out on our predictions episode, which you haven't had a chance to listen to, check it out. We do a lot of great analysis leading up to the start of the season on our podcast feed. You can find us anywhere they're found on Twitter, WNBA Weekly. So it really comes down to I expect Neko Ogumake to have a pretty huge turnaround this year. And I could easily see her making an MVP bid. I think she's in prime position to maintain herself as an elite player. I think she played a little bit under what her expectations were last year from my perspective, and I expect to see her come up big then as well. That said, all that goes out the window. I love me some good drama, and I want to see how it plays out when the Aces lose that game.
That's going to be a great game. That's in sports, you always kind of want to zig when others zag. Unless it's something obvious, like if the beginning of the year you're like, I think the Warriors are going to make the finals, be like, good for you, way to go bold. But like now that people are really jumping on the Aces bandwagon and saying like they're the favorite, they're like the favorite team to win it all. Like guys, they weren't in the playoffs last year. Like I know they made a big pickup, but I'm worried that maybe they're gonna be a little bit cooler coming into the season and take some time to figure things out.
Gotcha. No, makes total sense to me. So that's how we see the rest of the week going out. Logan, I don't know about you, but I've had a good time. I thought this was fun.
It's such a good time. It's like I know it's cheesy, but like it's just so nice to finally be in it.
Yeah.
And not forecasting or any of that. Like the off-season materials done for a while. I don't know. It was refreshing.
It's fun to be at the restaurant. It's nice to come in the door. You smell the smells. You walk in the door. The waiting room's a bit charming. You love sitting down, getting to know the waiter, getting a drink. But nothing beats when the meal shows up. It's just nice that we got the meal back. They placed it in front of us. They warned us that the plate is hot, and we're ready to dig in. It's just that's the highlight. It's why we show up. So it's good stuff. Was that the best or worst analogy you've ever heard?
I don't know because I was trying to work in a Fever joke, but I don't have one. The Fever won a game tonight at the restaurant. I don't know. We caught the Fever at the. I don't know. Fever have a W.
The meal that last year was giving all kinds of people food poisoning is suddenly the most popular thing on the menu. Like they tweaked it just enough, and tonight all of a sudden it's like they're out of buns. They sold so many of these.
Waiting 48 hours to be sure.
Yeah, I'm trepidatious, but it was better than I remember. Look, I'm gonna come back next week and I'll see if it's good again.
There we go. Yeah, we're into good enough territory now.
Okay, good. I actually okay. I think I'm gonna stop now, and I'm gonna let this thing go to bed because I can easily ruin it if I keep trying. Again, the other plugs. Check us out on Twitter at WNBA Weekly if you haven't already. Same nomenclature over at Facebook. If you'd like to, feel free to give us support on Patreon. It's definitely a big help for us. Head to our Store Envy show shop and grab yourself shirt merchandise, anything you can get your hands on. We love any support with that. Any proceeds for that go directly toward efforts that we can make to help get people to their first WNBA game. So, big on that as well. Anything else to call out, Logan, that I'm missing?
No, just there. I saw a really awesome comment right before everything that happened tonight. I think Kyle posted in our chat. Someone was asking if League Pass was $17 a month because they didn't see the anywhere. It is not. You get the whole everything for $17. You can watch. You can rewatch games. You have all the access to everything. I mean, it's one time at the restaurant, and then you get to eat there for free for the next 3 months. So, like,
gosh dang it, we've killed this analogy. It's amazing. I'm so proud of it. I think it's working well. No, I totally agree with you. That was actually my buddy who texted me. He asked me, he's like, "Hey, I want to get League Pass, but is it monthly?" I was like, "No, it's an annual fee." And you you're in the buffet, and you just get whatever you want. And he was like, "What?" They're definitely exciting. So if you're not on League Pass, which you probably all are, I feel like if you're dedicated enough to listen to a YouTube live stream of two like weird adult dudes talking about the games tonight, you're probably also on League Pass. But if not,
maybe it's a trial.
Jump on that
trial, and they're like, I don't know what it's about.
Go ahead and commit now. That's one less pair of Converse from Ross. And then you're in on. I'm sad that I know that well, but and then you're in on the League Pass. So much fun. We have a lot more basketball for the rest of the opening weekend, and then it's Memorial Day. Y'all go have a good time. Have a very safe and fun Memorial Day, and then we'll be back next week on the podcast to talk about news and updates. We'll go back to our regular in-season format. We just might throw another of these live streams up next week. We'll definitely see. But thank you guys so much for joining us. It's been a really fun night. So excited to have the WNBA back and in full strength. But until we see y'all next time, I'm Steve Schwartzman.
I'm Logan Jones.
And we got you next time.